All right, guys, ladies, thanks for hopping on. I know that time is precious, but if you can spend the next 25 minutes, and Carrie is with us to kind of talk about breastfeeding and nursing your baby and things to kind of expect and common things that we think are right, but maybe not, or just kind of making you feel a little bit more confident and comfortable in your journey. And then if you guys have some questions, you can type them in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask. So, if you have a specific situation going on, you can ask, or something general, or, if you want to know what to expect in the next month or so, think about those things. But I'm going to let Carrie go ahead. She's a lactation consultant and a labor and delivery nurse here in Florida. And we just happened to randomly meet on, I think, Facebook. And
yeah, I think we got connected just through coaching and somehow, and then our kids go to the same preschool.
And then we found out the kids are in the same preschool. So just kind of a cool little, and then I found out all this stuff. So she was actually very helpful when I was trying to manage my boobs when Hayden came. So I'm going to let Carrie go ahead and take it away, and I'm going to mute myself. So thank you, Carrie.
All right. So I have a list of notes here. Brittany gave me some ideas of things to go over for you guys. I generally start, or give a little background on myself. From the Philadelphia area, moved down to Florida about 3 years ago, and I've been a NICU nurse for 11 years. And when we moved to Florida, I started getting into the NICUs down here. It wasn't really a good fit, and so I started with postpartum. And I've been at our hospital in Jupiter it'll be 3 years in February, and I love it. And it's kind of developed my my hopes to help other moms with breastfeeding and the normal breastfeeding situation. I don't know if any of you have had preemies in the past, but working with NICU babies versus full-term babies, or even full-term NICU babies, it's just kind of a different situation as far as breastfeeding goes than it is compared to like a normal full-term baby that oftentimes happen, or majority of the time that happens. So whether you're like 6 weeks plus, or maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit longer than that you've been breastfeeding, no matter what your story is, but I'd love to just boost your confidence and just help encourage you just to keep going, because it's not easy. And each age that you go through, and however many months old they are, even into toddlers, so many things change. So I want to just go over this, just kind of what I'm going to go over for you guys, just some common questions based on supply, pumping, and also sleep. So we'll go over what should be changing right now if you're at the 6+ week range. You should have, the soreness should be diminished. If you had some soreness early on with breastfeeding, latch, they should start to have corrected themselves. If you're still having issues, feel free to reach out to me if you're still having a lot of pain with nursing, or if some things have changed. One thing that will change and make you a little bit more sore again could be teething. As your babies, when they get to about like 4 months old, even if they don't have any teeth coming through, and it's not necessarily the biting, but their saliva changes, and that can affect how the nipples feel. They might be a little bit more sore again and tender. So if that's an issue there, just kind of keeping the area clean, and you can start using lanolin again, any nipple butter, and that will change as your body adjusts to their new change in saliva. So supply and demand, that's the biggest thing when it comes to making sure you have enough for your baby. And I know Brittany and I talked about her supply issues, but not really an issue, but trying to like level everything off. And I don't know if you all were on earlier in the call, but she has quite an amount of breast milk that she was able to donate, which is awesome for so many moms. Me, on the other hand, I barely made enough for my babies. And you would think, being in lactation and being a NICU nurse, and I would be doing so awesome with breastfeeding. But when I first started as a new mom with my son, I had so many issues. He had what's called a tongue tie. So maybe some of you have seen or heard of that before. The little frenulum under his tongue was tight, and so he couldn't latch properly. I had a lot of pain. He wasn't gaining good weight. It was really stressful. And he set me up kind of for a low supply because he was not a good feeder at the beginning. Ooh. My computer just got brighter. But my daughter, on the other hand, who's now 3, they were about 2.5 years apart. She was an awesome breastfeeder from the start. No issues there. And so I had a much better supply with her. But setting the groundwork within the first couple months will determine kind of how your supply will be down the road. So since a lot of your moms are still earlier on, there's still a chance for you to boost your supply and just keep making enough for your baby. But if you want to increase your supply, it's really increasing the demand of the baby's feedings, whether it's frequency of feedings, or if you need to add in some pumping throughout the day just to increase your supply. There's probably see many things out there like lactation cookies or drinking beer and other things that are called galactagogues. So those are things that increase your supply that they claim to, but oftentimes they're temporary. What will increase for the long term is increasing the demand on your body to start making more milk, and that will increase your supply over time. There also can be other factors, maternal factors. Say you have hypothyroid. And these are things you might not know that would come into play. Hypothyroid can play into having a lower supply. If you've had breast surgeries in the past, any spinal injuries that can affect your thoracic nerves, that could have a part in it as well. So there's different things that to think about that's not necessarily baby related, but could be related to mom's body as well to affect the supply. And any questions you guys think of, feel free to just type in on the side and we can hit those a little bit later, or if they apply to the topic we were talking about, we can add that in there. Okay, so sure.
So with supply and demand and ways to like increase it, are there some women that just naturally just have like a low milk production? Like I didn't do anything. Like I gave birth to Hayden and I had to pump, like my boobs were massive and they hurt, like colostrum pumping because I hurt so bad. And I pumped out like 3 to 4 ounces of colostrum within the first like 4 hours of her being born. Mm-hmm. So are there some women that have like the nurses were like, you have stuff to give her, like in a bottle, you have it? I'm like, yeah, there's like 3 ounces in the fridge.
Yeah. And that's not really common, but that just hormonally for you, that's how your body reacted. But a lot of women still just can't make enough.
Okay, so right, so like some women, just no matter what they do, it could just be their, I guess I'm looking so that some women know like it's okay, because some women just naturally just, you can't, and some women are like me where it's like, oh my God, right?
Yes, I totally, and I have a client right now that I'm working with that we're trying so many different things to boost her supply. And it could be something underlying that's not necessarily diagnosed, that her body just can't create that much milk. So it is common. And thankfully we have formula out there. We have donated breast milk out there that can feed our babies and our babies won't starve. Formula is not the devil. Okay. It is not poison. It's made to feed your baby. So if you're feeling guilty about that as you're watching, it's hard. It's a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves to make this work and make this happen. And sometimes it just can't. And oftentimes stress can play into it, not getting enough sleep. Hormones are so fragile that your body sometimes can't make enough. So I appreciate you pointing that out, but it is true that not everybody makes enough for their babies. So you could do what you can, and if you have the will and you have the time to put in the extra time into demanding your body to make more and the patience to do that, go for it. But if you feel like you are just ready to, quit altogether, do what you can. Every little bit of breast milk helps with their immune system, helps with their gut health. So whatever you can give them is great, even if it's just an ounce a day. It still helps. And it also creates bonding, and it also still facilitates the bonding between you and baby. And you can still bond with your baby, still do skin to skin. If you are formula feeding or bottle feeding, you can still do skin to skin to bond with your baby. And whether you have breastfed from the beginning or not, you can even initiate that. That's one thing. We'll just jump back to the beginning of after you had your baby. Your nurses may have just put the baby right on your chest if you were able to do that. If not, that's okay. But that's kind of like a reset button. If you find you're getting frustrated, baby's getting frustrated as they go through a growth spurt or different stages of frustration, and you just want the baby to chill out and you want to chill out, get the baby's skin to skin, chest to chest with you. And it's a great way to reset. So a little side note there. Okay, so since we're talking about supply, hopefully it's not the schools. I'm getting a phone call from a 561 number. So since we're talking about supply, let's talk a bit about pumping. Some of you may be getting ready to go back to work, or you want to just have a little bit of freedom. So what I recommend for pumping and what I recommend to my clients is, and I'll hit your question in a second, Katie, but I recommend to some clients and also the classes prenatal classes that I teach, that you start pumping like once a day, once every other day within the first month or right after the first month starts, and offer a bottle within the first month to make sure that baby will go back and forth between the breast and the bottle. If you don't offer it early enough, or if you haven't offered it yet and you're beyond 6 weeks, I would offer it as soon as you can, just once a day or once every other day, so the baby gets used to that. Because the last thing you want to happen is you go to leave to go somewhere and your baby doesn't want to take a bottle or take anything from anybody else. And I encourage you to have your significant other or another family member offer the bottle to the baby and not you, because it can be confusing for them. If you are going to pump and replace the feeding, let me read your message real quick, Katie. I need to boost supply on one side, but I'm nervous to pump after feeding because she eats so often. So every 90 minutes or so, she'll be 6 weeks on Thursday. Okay. So a little suggestion for you there, Katie, is if you know you're going to be feeding within the hour, avoid pumping. Okay. So if it's right after the feeding, and one other question I want to give you about that, or one other thing I want to tell you, is to start your feedings for the next day on that side, so that she's most vigorous on that first side. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to start, I don't think you specified which side, but say it's your right side. Start on that right side for every feeding for the next day and see if that makes a difference. But if you go to pump, it's not always an exact amount that she's going to be getting from the breast. The pump does not work as well as a baby does. All right. So, and it's normal for most moms to have one side that makes more than the other. So it may just be that your body doesn't want to keep up on that side, and then it'll just compensate from the other side. So as long as you're offering both breasts each feeding, she'll get an even amount. But if you wanted to try that for a couple days, nurse her, start on that side and see if that helps to boost it a little bit, you can. Or you can pump that side after like 3 or 4 feedings during the day. See if that helps. Hopefully that helps you out. If not, feel free to reach out to Brittany to get my info too. No problem. Okay, so back to pumping. Anytime you're going to be pumping, make sure that, and you're replacing a feeding, make sure you fit in that pumping. Does that make sense for you guys? So most moms make more milk in the morning, and baby may only nurse on one side, and you find you have this one side that feels a little bit more full and uncomfortable. If you want to stick to that side or that time of day to being your pumping each day, that would be a good plan. But whatever you decide to do, be consistent. So say one day you pump at 8 o'clock in the morning, the next day you don't want to pump at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then back to 8 o'clock, so it kind of confuses your body a little bit more. So in that first time that you start pumping, you might not get much out because your body is not used to pumping at that time, and it will build up a supply, and will be able to create that on demand. Another thing about creating milk on demand, you may have noticed if you're about 6 to 8 weeks that your breasts don't feel as full. Between 6 to 12 weeks is kind of when that happens, that your hormones make a shift, that they start making the milk on demand. So it doesn't mean that your body is not making enough for your baby. Still keep track of your baby's diapers and make sure they're consistent, that they have like 6 to 8 heavy wet diapers a day. So if you feel that change and you're not as full and they feel a little deflated, it doesn't mean your body's not making it. Your body, if your baby is satisfied at the end of the feeding, you've offered both breasts, then you're good to go, okay? And just keep track of that output. Let's see, pumping. I want to make sure I covered everything back about pumping. Bottle, work. If you're going back to work and you're expecting your baby to be feeding every 3 hours, do your best to try to fit in pumpings during those times. But work can be crazy. I mean, I worked night shifts as a nurse and I could not get my pumpings in. And so it was hard to work in women's health and encourage moms to breastfeed, but hey, I can't make enough milk for my baby. And that's okay too. You know, you do what you got to do to feed your baby and fit it in when you can. Okay. So any other questions about pumping while I'm on that? Do you have any, Brittany?
Trying to think if I had any, because I exclusively pumped for the twins. So I'm trying to think if I had anything, but it may hurt. I will tell you that, the first few times it's gonna, even if you've been nursing this whole time, even now, when I get on the pump, I'm like, ooh, it just is, it doesn't hurt. It just doesn't feel like your baby nurses. It's a little bit, it's a machine. So it's going to feel like a machine.
It's plastic.
But can you touch on too, and this was a huge thing for me that I had to learn, having the right, what is it, flange?
Flange, yep.
For your thing can definitely affect the amount of milk that you are able to pull out with having the right size.
For sure. So with your pump kit, you may have gotten, depending on the brand, you may have gotten a couple different sizes. What you want it to look like is the end of the everted part of your nipple, the part that sticks out. And some women have flat, some women have inverted nipples. So it's a case-by-case basis, but whatever pulls out from your nipple should not rub against the size of the flange. So it shouldn't look like a hot dog going through the flange, if that makes sense to you guys. It should move freely in there. If you notice that it's starting to pull more of your areola in there, like the larger part, if you feel a pain and it's pulling that through there, then that's too big. The flange is too big and you can go smaller. If you find that the everted part of your nipple is rubbing against the side of the smaller section of the flange, then you need to go up a size. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, it's really important. It does affect your output if it's not the right size to be able to empty. And also, as you're pumping, do breast massage. Massage around the breast. If you have any hard knots, I say avoid the pumping bra. Or if you want one that's loose enough that you can stick your hand in there and massage out any knots that you might have, any clogs that you might have. So even if you had an old sports bra that's probably now it might be too big, you want to avoid anything tight around there as you're pumping because you want to be able to empty those ducts. Anything else on pumping? I'm missing questions yet, anybody? Okay. So since we talked about pumping, let me check my other notes. Now, volume. What should babies be taking if they're going to be taking a bottle? It's going to be different from formula-fed babies. So some formula-fed babies take like 4 to 5 ounces, but the composition of the breast milk and the formula are different. Calorie content can be a little different. So there's a couple websites online that you can look through if you just Google volume needed per baby. But for bottle feeding, for a breastfed baby, kellymom.com is a great website too. And then they have a milk estimator calculator thing on there as well. But one formula that I have here, it's if they're between 2 weeks and 3 months, they should be getting 2.4 ounces per pound. So for example, let me get my calculator out here. We want to do, there we go. We're going to do 2.4 times, say they're 10 pounds. So it's 24 ounces divided by however many times they're feeding per day. Okay, so if they're feeding 8 times per day, thanks Brittany for putting that in there. And kellymom.com has great resources anyway, lots of questions answered on there. So 2.4 ounces per pound per day, 10 pounds, 24 ounces. So divide that by 8 times per day. They should get about a 3-ounce bottle, okay? Some will take less. Some might not take much from a bottle at all, and then they might wait till you get home, and they might want to feed more frequently. So that's common as well, and that's called reverse cycling. So if you're working an 8-hour day and your baby really does not want to take much from your caregiver, then you're home at night and they want to be feeding every 2 hours during the night, it's because they're reverse cycling, and that's normal. They just want to spend time with you. So that will end eventually when they get older and they're not breastfeeding anymore. So if you're willing to fight through it and have that extra time with your baby, then that's the reason why they're doing that. As they get a little bit older, all right, so I saw you put that in there. And then if you want to type in 1.8 ounces per pound from 3 to 5 months. Most babies average about 4 ounces as they get older if they're feeding less frequently during the day, and if they're getting more supplemental feedings like solid foods after 6 months, it's usually around 4 to 5 ounces of pumped breast milk per day with the bottle. Yep. And you might have to add in an extra pumping to be able to put out that much for your baby. And it's not because you're not making that much when you're nursing, it's just the pump is not getting enough out for you. Okay. So growth spurts, jumping over to volume, growth spurts happen. You may have noticed around week 3, 6, 9, 12, every 3 weeks for a few days, sometimes even up to a week, they want to feed pretty frequently, and that's normal. Just go with it. They're boosting your supply. Try to avoid supplementing at that time. If you feel like this sounds like a growth spurt, tough it out, they'll adjust. And then even as they get a little bit older, 6 months, 9 months, they go through a little growth spurt too. Okay, so just to look ahead, we talked a little bit about teething and how that can affect it, but also can affect their sleep. So they might start to wake up more frequently as they're teething and might want to nurse. You might notice the next morning or the morning after you feel a little full again. So that could happen too, especially after growth spurts as well. But if they are nursing more frequently at night and you go to get up in the morning, you might notice that you're a little bit more full. Okay. So as far as sleep goes, every baby is different. And they may or may not want to sleep through the night. They may not be a Hayden over there who wants to sleep, who's a good little sleeper. But some
she only did 6 hours last night, and I was like, because she spoiled me so much with 8. Like,
yeah. And if you are still early on, like if you're still around the 6-week mark, just be careful going longer than 5 hours at night, because you don't want to set yourself up for a breast infection with mastitis. You want to make sure that you're empty when they do feed, that they empty that side. Brittany had asked I maybe talk a little bit about foremilk, hindmilk also, and that sometimes can be, it can like mess with your head a little bit. Like, oh no, are they getting the hindmilk? So foremilk is kind of like the thinner, thirst quenching milk that they get when they initially latch on. Hindmilk is the fattier, helps keep them more content milk at the end of the feeding. And there's not one specific, like they have to feed for 10 minutes to get to the hindmilk. Every baby, everybody's different. But if you were to finish on the first side, and we talked a little bit about how your breast might not feel as full, but you'll know baby comes off on her own after a certain period of time, and they get older, they're not going to feed as long. So say you're nursing for 10 minutes and baby comes off on her own and it doesn't want to relatch on that side, burp her and switch her to the other side. Okay. And then just be confident she got to that hind milk over there and she's kind of done on that side. Right. So anyway,
that was really fun.
Finishing on the first side before moving on to the second side will help to prevent.
I'm going to mute everybody and then have you.
I'll be at the pumpkin patch with you. It was fun. I did like it. It was really fun. Where's your pumpkin? Is it your...
All right, we're good. Sounds good. Okay, you can hear me now? Cool. All right, so yeah, so that's pretty much it as far as that goes. What other questions do you guys have? If you want to unmute yourself and, or if you can think of anything else. Sleep, we talked a little bit about. Any more questions about sleep that you can think of? Supply, pumping? I blabbed a lot. Sorry, I'm not super organized with my.
No, I think that was good. I think it just to have those, because you know, once you make it past like, okay, we have kind of a rhythm. Now it's like, now what's normal? Like you feel like, you know, I had 2 weeks where Hayden was like every 2 to 3 hours and she was fine. Now like the last 3 days, I feel like at nighttime it's every hour. Like she wants to eat at 6, 7, 8, but it's after she sleeps from, you know, 2 to 4:30 or 2 to 5. So she hasn't eaten in 4 or 5 hours. And, you know, so now she does 7, 8, 9, 9:30, like, and has this big feeding.
That cluster feeding is totally normal. They're really tanking up to sleep longer at night too. So go with that as well. I know with Avery, our second, I would swaddle her up and I'd put her in my sling and I would eat dinner, then take her out, feed her, put her back in, get our son ready for bed, feed her again, you know, and they don't feed for that long, maybe like 10, 15 minutes or even 5 minutes. And then they're back to sleep or they're distracted. One thing I didn't talk about too was as they get older, they'll get distracted easier. So if you find that they're not staying on there and you know they need to feed longer, go to like a quiet, dim room. Try your best to do that. Or they'll make up for it later in the day. It might do cluster feeding. Like she's probably distracted by her brother and sister too.
Mm-hmm.
Or she's tired and she's sleeping longer and then she wants to tank up for bedtime.
That's for Matthew. I'm like, I'd rather have her eat 6 to 7, 6, 7, 8, whatever, and then sleep from 9 to 3. Like that's more. So I guess cluster feeding is, I mean, that's normal right now. Again. Hold on, my girlfriend's here dropping off water.
Oh, nice. Oh, she got you water. I'm jealous.
My next question, if you want to, like, I can listen to the recording, but like pumping it before, like pumping during the night if baby's sleeping, like do you set an alarm or like how do you do that?
We can talk about that. All right, so you go answer your door. So as far as pumping goes during the night, if you're going to be nursing your baby during the night, I would not recommend pumping during the night unless you have somebody else feeding the baby a bottle. So anytime that your baby is getting a bottle feeding, you need to be making up that feeding with a pumping at some other time during the day, because most likely you're going to be out or you're going to be sleeping, and there's a reason why that baby is getting a bottle. So if you make that your pumping from the morning and your baby gets that bottle at night, that's fine. Early on, like I said, I want to make sure you guys avoid the stretching more than like 5 to 6 hours at night, just to make sure you're not setting yourself up for mastitis. And if you notice any hard spots on your breast or any red or sore spots, massage those out really hard, with pumping or even in the shower, to help move that clog around so that it can release the milk, to make sure that it doesn't end up getting infected, okay? And if you do end up with an infection, or if you feel feverish, you feel like you might be getting mastitis, it does not mean that there's anything wrong with your milk. It's just around that area can get infected. So your milk is fine to feed unless you have an abscess, which is icky, and if you do have any issues, just reach out to your local lactation consultant, to the hospital you work at, or talk to your OB about that. So as far as pumping goes, yeah, at nighttime, I wouldn't really worry about it too much unless you're missing a feeding. So, for example, you put together a bottle for dad to feed at, for dad or somebody else to feed at like 11 p.m. and you wake up at midnight to pump. That's fine. But, you might just want to plan it out for another time during the day so you can get that stretch of sleep. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense for you guys. Make sure we got all of that. Anybody else have questions? Feel free to unmute yourself. Anybody? Bottle feeding too. There's not any one specific bottle that would be best. And it's really go by what works for you and your baby. The slower flow ones are often a better bet, and they have some that claim to be, I'm just talking a little bit about what kind of bottles to get and to use. But whatever you decide to do, wait until you find your baby likes it before you buy like a whole set. And if you do want to be exclusively breastfeeding and maybe do a bottle a day or a bottle here and there, just get 1 or 2. Like, you don't need to get a whole bunch of them. Save yourself some money. And if you haven't gotten a pump already, talk to your insurance company, because you should be able to get one and either get reimbursed for it, or they'll be able to send you one because it's part of the Obamacare.
Yeah, I had the plan to exclusively pump. So I had my new pump, I bought all my bottles, and I bought everything for pumping, and I have like a bottle warmer and like all this stuff, and here it sits. Like, it's just, I use the bottles for storage. Like the nice ones. Yeah. Like, I have a $90 Born Free Dr. Brown's bottle warmer, the sanitizer stuff, bottles, glass bottles, like, and all of it's cleaned and put away because I wanted them before baby come. So.
And Hayden had a different plan, or she did really well. So, which is awesome.
She did really well when she latched. So I'm like, well, we'll just keep this going.
Definitely. It's funny how, and every baby's different. Like, you might have a hard time with this baby, but if you have another one, totally different experience. So don't let this experience determine your future plans to breastfeed more babies down the road.
Yep. And I think, like, take it day by day. And I the biggest thing, and Carrie said this when she got on here, however you decide to feed your baby, you're feeding your baby. So if you can go as long as you can nursing, and maybe you get stressed out, or maybe pumping and work is too stressful, or maybe, you're like me and you have toddlers, and sometimes it gets really frustrating, or I feel bad telling them I can't because I have to feed Hayden. And this is something I'm working on, just to shed you guys. Like, I have a really hard time giving her a bottle. Like, I don't want to leave and go do stuff on Saturday, if all goes well, and give her a bottle. Like, I that anxiety is on me so much. So maybe you feel the same way. Like, it's not normal, I'm told, but it's normal, like, you just have to do what you need to do for your baby, and it's okay. So whatever that is for you, and whatever way is going to make you happy and your household happy, that's the key. But just know there are resources like Carrie and KellyMom.com that you can reach out to if you start to get overwhelmed, or, ask our group. You can ask. There's so many of us that are going through this. But Carrie said it's a journey, and each stage is going to be a little bit different, and each stage is going to bring its own challenges. So anything you want to
let me just add one more thing. And I feel like we could, now that we start talking about it, now I could be like, oh, so many things that I share with you guys. One thing that I don't know if you plan on talking about in your challenge group at all is emotional state and postpartum depression, because a lot of that, like, it can even come on later on, but make sure that if you're around loved ones and they're concerned with how your emotional state is, take that seriously if you need to see anyone, because if you have a history of anxiety and depression at all, that can trigger postpartum depression to come through. And breastfeeding your baby, not getting enough sleep, all contributes to that. So make sure you have someone helping you keep in check as far as how you are doing emotionally. And if you need help, and get some medicine to help you get back on track, or go talk to someone. So don't be afraid to do that, because a lot of moms don't take care of that, and it ends up being detrimental to their family. So take that seriously.
And I think it's more common than we think. It's one of those things like a miscarriage or infertility. Like, it's not talked about. It's very, quiet and push on the down low, because you're supposed to be in this happy, joyful, I have a new baby stage. And
it sucks.
It is stressful. It is hard, whether this is your first baby, your second, or your third. Each one, I was like, oh, everyone's like, oh, you've had twins. One's going to be simple. I'm like, yeah, one, but now I have two toddlers that on top of this one, I have to figure out this dynamic. So wherever you're at in your family too, it's stressful, and it's okay to feel stressed, or it's okay to have days where you're like, I don't know what is going on, or I don't want this. But that all kind of plays into your hormones and everything you're doing. So like Carrie said, use your resources. And, I have my sister going, you need to get out. You need to, be you too. And I'm like, well, it's easy for you to say, you don't have kids.
And you don't run a business.
Yeah.
And then exercise helps so much. So I'm glad you guys are in this group, because getting your bodies moving. One of my really good friends who's a coach, she struggled with postpartum depression, and she became a coach and started doing 21 Day Fix, and it helped her so much fight through her postpartum depression. So congratulations for making this decision to be in this group, because I know I love my groups too. So
it's huge. It's that community. And I think we're all moms right now. We're all first time in the moment moms right now. And so you guys, use the group, use the support, and use each other. So
yay, cool.
Thank you, Carrie. I really appreciate it. Ladies, I hope you got a tidbit or two. I will have the recording up. So if you want to share with a friend, or you need to go back and listen if you were distracted or whatever, I'll have the recording up hopefully tonight. And Carrie, I'll send it to you as well. But thank you for taking the time today.
Of course, I'm glad we could work it out in our hurricane prep.
Yes, and I'll see you probably in an hour.
Yeah, I'll see you soon. You're welcome, Jessica. Take care, guys.
Bye, guys. Thank you.